So we've probably all been there before. You fire up Tuya Convert to get your new plug or bulb or switch and throw Tasmota or ESPHome on it, right? Pull it out of the cloud and do your thing. But you put it in the pairing mode and you just get the periods going back and forth. You give it a shot again, same thing over and over. Well, it's probably blocked with Tuya Convert. So what do? Let's check out some alternatives that don't require Tuya Convert and don't require any soldering. Let's get to it. So of course, at the time of the recording of this video, the Tuya Convert has been patched for many switches and light bulbs and various other plugs that are even coming brand new out of the box. We all knew this was coming, and things were just going to have to go full circle and go back to the manual mode until there was some other patch found that we could exploit Tuya Convert again. But at the time of this video, that just hasn't been found yet. Hopefully that can be soon, but until then, let's go for the sure thing where we just use a simple USB flasher and no soldering. I know a lot of people don't like to do soldering and everything, which I do get. I understand that. Soldering isn't for everyone. So we're going to compile a list of various products that are simple to open up and have pin headers open, or various other options that are easily able to flash them without any soldering. Now we'll show a couple in this video and how to do those by just putting the pin headers in, and we'll also show ones we've done in the past. So if you have any other products that you would like to recommend that are also solderless that have the open pin headers, be sure and give us a link down below in the description. Now, if you don't see the comment right away, I may have to go hit approve being a link in a comment. But we'll get it updated to the blog post and the video description so others can share it and see all the various products that are solderless. So let's check out a few things that we can load Tasmota or ESPHome on and get them out of the cloud. So first up, we'll start with the Shelly. They really do embrace the DIY community. Their stock firmware does have MQTT, but of course, we normally like to run Tasmota or something else that's pure open source. That way we control it all. So if you check out the Shelly, they even list all of the pins and put the pin header on the outside of the unit, and that way we don't even have to open it up. Very cool, easy to flash, right in their documentation. Check it out. Of course, they follow through with the Shelly 2.5 and the Shelly EM, the Shelly RGBW, etc. All the pin headers are right on the outside, very easy to flash. So speaking of the Shelly, we'll go ahead and talk about the Sonoff Mini. Typically, when normally someone copies a product, usually you try to make it better and not worse. I really don't understand what IT was thinking when they said, hey, let's copy the Shelly, and then made something worse. I don't get it. So of course there's no pin header on the outside for us to flash. They try to do this DIY mode and make us jump through 1,000 hoops with doing hotspots and different passwords and using different apps. No. They should have copied what Shelly did. They really wanted to make a great product, they could have done a open pin header and broken out several other GPIO pins for us to add sensors to. Now that would have been a killer product, but they missed the boat. Maybe next time, Sonoff, right? There's always a maybe make it better in the version 2 or version 3, right? But, well, we know how that goes. So of course that leads to the Sonoff Basic R3 with the DIY mode. We did cover that in a previous video. The pin headers are open and you can just put the wires in it and flash it directly. Very simple. So for light switches in the US, we do have the Go Sun and the KU LED light switches that do have the open pin headers, and they even label them for us. There's even a 5 volt, there's TX, GPIO 0, RX 3.3, and ground, as you can see. And we did cover that in a video, and you can do it all without any soldering. Now, if there's any other light switches that are from other countries, be sure to give us a link down below and we'll include those. So previously there was the KU LED light switch. It's very similar to the Go Sun ones. They're actually made by the same company, it's just a different revision. And they did leave the pin headers open for us. So also there's the Outtakes City 3-way and the single pole light switches. They as well left the pin headers open for us, and we've covered those in previous videos. They're also a solderless solution for light switches in the US. But what about smart plugs? Well, eTech City did it as well. And look, they even labeled it for us: TX, RX, GPIO 0, 3.3, and ground. Now, I did have one issue with my particular plug, and it could have been a hardware issue. With Tasmota, I was getting a voltage drop every once in a while, and I did talk about that in the live stream when we were doing that plug. I did end up setting up ESPHome with it, and it worked perfectly in ESPHome after I got the plug calibrated. But it is an option for a plug with no soldering. They are kind of a pain to open up as the case is very tight, but you can open them up. They don't use screws, but they aren't glued together like some other plugs we've done in the past. Now, of course, still my favorite, which is going to give a mention here, is the Sonoff S31. They did design that with the screws. It's easy to open. It's fairly simple to solder, but it just doesn't make the cut. But it's still one of my favorite plugs. If you definitely want to check out that video, if you want to do some minor soldering and want a really good plug, the Sonoff S31 is still a good choice. So, what next? Bulbs. Well, that's where things are falling short in my list of things, and hopefully we can fix that and find a bulb that doesn't require soldering. Now, this is the LOHAS bulbs, and we covered that in the past. They do have the pins exposed. A lot of bulbs actually don't have the pins exposed, but it does require some semi-fine soldering to get to the pins, but they are flashable. Now, I have seen some people do some 3D printed jigs with these bulbs and some pogo pins, but we are trying to stick to something that just takes pushing the pins through the holes to flash it, because not everyone has access to a 3D printer. So if you do know of any bulbs that do have this, please definitely send us the link down below, and we'll get them added and updated in the list of things, and possibly maybe we'll do a video on it in the future. So let's go check out two more products. There's a switch and an interesting receptacle that can be done all without soldering that make our list this evening. Tekken SR40. It's a Wi-Fi socket that does have independent control of each plug, plus it does have independent control of the USB port. There are a few LEDs along with the buttons to control each socket. So it's real simple to open up. There are 4 Phillips screws on the back. So once you do take those out, the front faceplate just pulls off, and put that to the side. And be mindful, the screws may pop out the back, so make sure you don't lose the screws. And then simply take the 3 wires and push them forward, and the entire module will push through the case. You may have to pull it up a little bit and help it pull through. Just simply feed the wires, because they do kind of grip on the case. Pretty simple unit. You can see the 3 LEDs along with the 2 buttons on the front. And the model is a KS604KB-20. This typically shows the KS, means it's made by a company called Kesson. Now, I have tried to flash these before manually, way before even Tuya Convert, but I had issues with the switch not powering up. But with this particular model, I didn't have that issue, and I was able to power it up into flash mode and flash the switch. Now, I wasn't able to power it up into Tasmota, because your typical USB flasher doesn't have enough power to power this device, but I was able to flash it using GPIO 0. So you'll notice here on the corner, there's your ESP chip, and there's the header. But as you can see, there's the square one on the right, that's voltage. The next one is TX, next one's RX, and next one's ground. So just remember that the TX and RX are in the middle, and then the ground is on the opposite from the square one. And I did check this with a voltmeter, and it is actually correct. Now you may be asking, where's GPIO 0? I thought this was going to be solderless. Well, yes it is. If you look closely here, right between this capacitor and the ESP8266, you'll notice there's a small letter of I, O, and it should be a 0. So this little via hole is going to be GPIO 0. As we're going to put in our wires using some DuPont male jumper wires, and then as we plug in the USB, we'll simply touch this GPIO 0 to ground, and then during the flashing, you don't need to hold that to GPIO 0 to ground. You just need to hold that to GPIO 0 right during the initial boot. And that's it. It's real simple to flash, no soldering. Make sure that they are not touching each other and they're not touching this neutral pin. So basically what you'll want to do is hold this just like that on GPIO 0, and then you'll have someone else plug in the USB cable. Wait a couple seconds, and then you can let this pin go. Just make sure it doesn't ground or anything else on the board. And don't forget, you won't be able to configure this using Termite, or at least I wasn't able to, because the USB flasher doesn't have enough power to power up this entire board along with the USB port, etc., through the GPIO pins. So once you flash it and it shows success, go ahead and put it back together and power it up with mains, and then you can use the Tasmota access point mode and you can configure it that way. And you've probably seen these many times, as this is still one of my favorite smart switches. Just like this clean design, plus you get the control of the dual color LED, plus you even get the little button down here which does do the reboot of the device if needed. Fits in the standard Decora plate as usual, and this one is just the standard single pole switch, or as we awkwardly call it in the US, the two-way. So of course, like always, we'll pop this open with the spudger. So run down the edge and pop her open, and then help the green wire come through, as it's just a pass-through ground. Or you can just detach the bracket. Of course, again, they do give us a plug. Unplug it. Since I've already pinned this out for you, you don't even have to unscrew this from the faceplate. It's just a standard Tuya module near the side, along with the buttons. So hopefully they'll keep this here in any revisions. But you'll notice this little pin header, they probably use it for programming in the factory. Well, hint, hint, manufacturers, if you'd like us to keep buying your devices, keep doing this and keep stuff intact like this. It'll keep the niche crowd of the DIYers buying your products, because we know that we can easily flash them and do what we want with them. And we'll tell others to do the same. Plus, you get to sell to everyone else that will use in the cloud. So it's a win-win, right? Well, on this header, we actually will be able to use GPIO 0, RxTX, ground, and 3.3 voltage, all without soldering. Pretty cool, right? So again, we'll use our male DuPont jumpers. Now, I have found that some DuPont jumpers that are male like this won't fit through the via holes. So you may need to use some breadboard jumpers if yours are too large. And what I've done before with those is simply take the female to female DuPont jumper wires and then take the breadboard jumper and simply put it in and plug it together like this, and that will give you a smaller wire for a DuPont to actually pass through the via hole like this. Now, the only thing bad about this with using these little jumpers, they're not as tight as the DuPont jumpers, so you may have to have something hold them or use some tape or whatnot. I don't have that issue with these DuPont jumpers, so we'll just use those, and they do hold themselves. Since this one isn't labeled, we'll go ahead and do a frame with the actual labels of the pins. That way you can pause it and make sure your wires are correct. And then the ground actually gets the blue wire. Now, they may change the colors up, so be mindful of that. But it will be the middle wire, and we'll simply just plug it in the plug. And that's all there is to it. And you've just connected this up to the USB flasher and can plug it in and flash your firmware and configure it, because this does have enough power to configure it via serial as well. So for the sake of this video, we will go ahead and show the flashing and configuration, but if you're already a pro and know that, you can skip through that. So once you have all your wires connected, you're going to need a couple things. You're going to need the latest SONOFF bin file, and you'll need the Node MCU Pi flasher. And of course, we will leave the links down in the description of the video below, so you don't have to go searching for them and whatnot. So we'll go on over to releases and scroll all the way down, and we're looking for the sonoff.bin file. And every single device pretty much will be flashed the same that we're going to talk about here. That's the solderless solutions. So we'll download the SONOFF bin file, and then we'll need the Node MCU Pi flasher. If you go over to releases, and don't be confused with the antivirus reports, make sure you go down below the assets and download the exe file. And since we are using 64-bit here, we're going to use the x64 file. So navigate to your downloads and open up the Node MCU Pi flasher. And don't plug in the unit just yet, because what I like to do is go ahead and check what COM ports I have available, because you may have some other different COM ports based on Bluetooth and various other things. And then I'll plug in the USB and do a refresh to see which one is new, and that's the one I know is my USB flasher. So I've got 11 and 12. Go ahead and plug in the unit. I'll hit the little refresh arrows on the right. And now I have COM19, so I know that's the one for my USB flasher. I'll browse on to pick the SONOFF bin file. I'll go ahead and leave the baud rate at 115/200, and make sure you do pick the out. And I'll go ahead and say yes, wipes all data. That'll wipe all the data and flash the bin all in one step. So then we'll go ahead and hit flash Node MCU. And as soon as you see it saying detecting chip and everything, you know you have it correct. If not, you may need to go make sure that you do have a proper ground of that GPIO 0. And if you check that, go ahead and flip the RX and TX lines around as well, because of course RX on the flasher goes to TX on the unit and vice versa. Sometimes we've seen on some units it's not always labeled right, or you just may have them confused. So you can just try to switch them around and power cycle the USB flasher. So once it's flashed, you'll go ahead and pull the power from the unit. And on ours, the GPIO 0 is the brown cable, so we'll disconnect that one. You can either unplug it from the board, or you can disconnect it from the USB flasher itself, but make sure you don't disconnect ground. So we disconnected GPIO 0, and we'll apply power again. This takes it out of bootloader mode, so it should boot into Tasmota, and we can load up Termite. So we'll close the Node MCU Pi flasher, and we'll pull up Termite. Make sure it's on the correct COM port. Looks like the COM port has changed. So once you press enter at the bottom prompt and you do get the command unknown, you know you have Tasmota on the device. Then we can send over a backlog command of the SSID and the password, and that will put it on the Wi-Fi, and then we'll jump to the actual web GUI. So at that point, you should see the IP address, and you should see it saying the Wi-Fi is connected. If not, you'll need to make sure and go back and put in the correct SSID and password. Maybe something didn't go in as planned until you get the right IP address. So at this point, we know we have an IP address. We're going to go ahead and put the switch back together, and we'll power it off of mains. That way we can check out the relay and everything else on it and configure any templates. But other than that, that's all there is to it. Very simple to flash Tasmota. Now, of course, if you wanted to flash ESPHome, you could just go through and make your ESPHome YAML file and then do a compile and download the bin file and send that over using the same Node MCU Pi flasher. Well, guys and gals, that's it. There's our list of current devices that I know of that can simply be flashed without any soldering, and you know they're a sure thing. When you order them and get them in, you can flash your favorite firmware. Now, of course, we're going to try to keep this a living type of video description along with the blog post. So I can't update the video and I can't post pictures in the video description, but check out the blog post. We will add to the list along with pictures of all of the pin headers so you can easily see how to flash things. As everyone adds and shares more products, we'll just continue to build a list of those sure thing flashable products. So no matter what country it's for or where you buy it from, definitely send us the link and we'll get it published on the website as soon as possible. So until then, until they find a new exploit, we're just going to have to go with the sure thing of flashing manually, which typically is not a bad thing, because if ever you do have a bad firmware upgrade or get locked out for some reason, just pop it open, Plug in the wires, and boom, your device is there, not locked out. I definitely like that versus some of the other plugs that are glued together, because I still kind of maybe cringe a little bit when I'm doing some firmware upgrades to things, because it just may not do correct. And I know I would be having to break it open and possibly destroy the plug to upgrade the firmware on it. So until next time, if you're not already a subscriber, smash that subscribe button, hit the bell icon, and check us out on our next video. And y'all take care. Wow, there's another one. What? You're still here? Well, if you did hang around this long, we might as well show you some cool little video footage that we did on vacation, right? Let me know what you think.
How's there a big hole in the earth? How's there a big hole in the earth?
It just is.
Going down. Let's go in. Let's go in.
See?
They're eating you.
They're not eating me, they're eating my dead skin. Don't worry.
Cheese. Say cheese.
Oh, okay. Like this? Okay. Hey, Mom, get in the picture. Say cheese.
Scare the fish. It's gonna scare the fish and they jump in. It's gonna jump in.
Then I'll come back and get you?
No thanks. No thanks. No thanks. I'm okay.
Can I throw you in?
No.
Okay, you ready?
I'm gonna watch you. I'm gonna watch you jump in.
All right, okay, I'll go.
Are you
Ready?
gonna go in water?
Watch. Okay, I'm gonna pick them up. Once it clears, I'm picking them up and going. Well, no, I'm just putting you over here. Hold your nose.
Is that horse gonna do it? Is that horse gonna run?
Okay, sit in the middle between us two. Are you calling them?
Come on, see.
See? What? What were you doing?
I'm looking at it. It scared me.
You thought you'd fall down? Huh?
No.
You thought you'd fall down? You were looking way down there?